Good evening, everyone. This is Clarence Tong here. Welcome to the ADC's third live stream session. You may know that this is the third month in a row that we have canceled our physical ADC meeting, which takes place on the first Monday of the month. But we look forward to bringing people together again and welcoming dozens of new members at the right time. With the help of our Vice Chair for Technology, Ricardo Alfaro, the ADC has been able to hold monthly live streams to keep our members, volunteers, and voters informed with important updates from our elected officials and the community, as well as tell you more about our ADC efforts heading into the November election. On behalf of the ADC, I would like to especially thank the frontline and essential workers who have put their lives at risk to get us through this unprecedented public health crisis. I also wanted to acknowledge that this is an especially hard moment for many of us, particularly for our African-American brothers and sisters who experience again and again the horrors of racism that led to the deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor over the past 3 weeks. We stand for racial justice, hope that justice will be brought swiftly for George and the others, and will work as steadfast allies to keep such tragedies from ever happening again. Tonight, we will be hearing from two special guests, our Congressman Don Beyer, as well as a live Executive Director, Jennifer Ayers, whose organization has been playing a critical role in the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in the area of food assistance and distribution, and providing other emergency services to families in need. But before we start, I wanted to provide you a quick update on the ADC's efforts to prepare for the November 3rd election, which is only 5 months away. The ADC has been planning a public citywide campaign to encourage Alexandria voters to request a mail-in absentee ballot due to the uncertainty of the COVID situation, particularly this fall. The no excuse absentee voting law passed by the General Assembly will be taking effect starting in July. This will make it easier to vote absentee. However, it is still a 3-step process, and it's important to get right all 3 steps. First, you need to be registered to vote and to make sure that your registration is up to date. Second, you can already request your absentee ballot online or through the city's Office of Voter Registration. The third and final step is completing the absentee ballot when you receive it in the mail around mid-September and mailing it back by Election Day so it will be counted. Our Democrats to Go team has also been hard at work phone banking to support the re-elections of 2 Virginia Congresswomen, Elaine Luria and Abigail Spanberger, who are both facing competitive re-elections in November. We would welcome your help, and you can find out more at democratstogo.org, or you can email dems2go@gmail.com to volunteer. There are many things on our minds these days, and it leaves us exhausted from the COVID pandemic and economic hardship it has created for so many, to George Floyd and how we can bring justice to him and his family. I'm glad we have Congressman Beyer joining us tonight to provide his perspective. I know that Don has been working hard to stay in touch with constituents during this unprecedented time. And due to the proximity to the Capitol, Don is frequently asked to serve as the Speaker pro tem or to proxy vote for members who are not able to make it back due to the pandemic. So if you're interested in asking Congressman Beyer a question tonight, please type it into the Facebook chat box, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. So let's get started. Congressman Beyer, please tell us what Congress has been up to and what we should know.
Good evening. Wonderful Alexandria Democrats and Clarence. Thank you for the invitation to be on this tonight. I am exceptionally proud to be an Alexandria Democrat and intend to be one for the rest of my days. I'm excited to be on with Jennifer Ayers, too. I've long been a fan of Alive. You're doing really, really good work, Jennifer, keeping people alive, literally, with food and more. So it's an honor to serve with you. You mentioned proxies. I set the record for proxy votes right now. I voted 48 times last week on Wednesday and Thursday, way more than anybody else. One time I forgot to vote for myself. I had to run back and cast my own. It was fun and interesting. I like to think that all these people asked me to carry their proxy votes because of my reputation for peerless integrity, but it might have something to do with the fact I live closer to the Capitol than anybody else. But it was fun. And I got to be Speaker Pro Tem this morning for 6 minutes, as long as it took to do the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Although I did, as Speaker Pro Tem, accept President Trump's veto of our Senate House Joint Resolution overturning Betsy DeVos's evil rule that basically makes it almost impossible for somebody who got cheated by one of the private colleges to get their loan written off. Little things. You know, the biggest thing happening right now is this terrible turmoil and racial strife that Donald Trump and his folks have made ever worse. You know, you keep imagining a day with any other president would try to calm things down rather than make things worse. But it's not surprised when you get a racist president who put people like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller in the White House, who right now has called out all these troops in Lafayette Park. I mean, God knows what he's afraid of. He can go down there and hide in the bunker. Just the worst possible president. I spent a lot of time talking to African-American leaders around Virginia in the last couple of days, trying to figure out a way to go forward. We will have really constructive things to say about the militarization of the police, about qualified immunity. I want to see us put together a bona fide anti-racist agenda, not something that's race neutral, a little bit here and a little bit there, but recognize that you're not going to overcome 400 years of slavery and discrimination and Jim Crow and mass discrimination, mass resistance with you know, just like, okay, everybody's equal now. I'm struck by the fact that in February, the net worth of an African-American family was 1/10 what it was for a white family in America. And, you know, my new role as co-chair of the Joint Economic Committee, we just put out a report about 6 weeks ago about the disparate impact of coronavirus on people of color. But once again, you're 4 or 5 times more likely to die of this if you are a person of color rather than, you know, a white American. Let me move on. Most of my activity the last 3 months has been COVID-19 related. In the Joint Economic Committee role, I've been leading the fight for extended unemployment insurance and unemployment insurance that turns on and turns off as it's needed state by state. You know, the Congressional Budget Office says we're going to be north of 10% unemployment all of next year, all of 2021. And there will be places like Nevada that could be north of 15% going into 2022. We, the federal government, have a lot more to do. The knuckleheaded Mitch McConnell and the president seem to think we've done enough. If we just do what we've done right now, we are looking at the 1930s all over again, but worse, with people homeless and people starving, and certainly with people out of job. I've also been working hard from my science perspective on prizes for people who can develop testing much more quickly. We want tests to be able to be done in the home without PPE, without personal protection, in 5 minutes or less, because we really need to test every frontline worker every single day. And that will make it much easier for people to be safe and to be able to go out. I've also been working on accelerating vaccine approval through something called challenge studies, where instead of vaccinating 3,000 people and then following them for years to see who gets sick, we vaccinate 100 young people, 100 people between the ages of 20 and 30 that are already healthy, and then infecting them with the disease and see who gets sick. It can shorten the time needed to get vaccine approval by years, literally. And we need that in order to make the economy, the American people safe and the economy open. And we work on so many different things every day, but I've also been leading the effort to stop the stupid 4th of July celebration, Donald Trump's Salute to America, where you can bring a lot of tanks and a lot of overhead planes and put 500,000 or 1 million people on the mall. We've already seen the rebound in places like Alabama and Arkansas from opening up too early as their cases are growing or spiking again. You know, and God knows We'll see how many people got sick at the beach or at the stock car races last weekend, Memorial Day weekend. We need to not be wasting money on something that is essentially jingoistic for Trump's ego and take it one step at a time. Finally, on politics, I'm in my 6th year as DCCC finance chair, only because they can't find anybody else willing to take it. And we're 42 incumbent members we're trying to protect. As Clarence led, Elaine Luria, Abigail Spanberger are the 2 in Virginia. They're both terrific candidates, and they've really worked hard the last 2 years to build strong bases, but it's still going to be close races, and we're going to need to do the Alexandria on the go a lot to help them get over the thing. But I thought maybe we could have 8 or 10 red seats that we could pick up, because we already got all the low-hanging fruit a year and a half ago. Instead, as of this morning, we're at 19 seats held by Republicans or formerly held by Republicans, a lot of them retired, that we think we can pick up. So many retired in Texas, they call it Texit rather than Brexit. And people like Dan Feehan in Minneapolis or Sri Srinivasan in Arizona, and all those seats. So we're doing everything we can to support each and every one of them. And it's really fun. I look at the Senate. I feel really good about taking back the Senate. Montana, Arizona, Colorado, Maine, North Carolina, maybe Georgia, Iowa, a lot of seats that we can win. Even if we have to give back Alabama, and I pray we don't. And then there's Joe Biden. I was just on the Joe Biden National Finance Committee call at 5 o'clock with Rufus Gifford, who's the deputy campaign manager. And he showed us their electoral map, which seems very, very plausible, starting with Michigan, where Biden's got a big lead, and Pennsylvania, a good lead. Wisconsin's the closest one with only a 3-point lead. But Arizona's in play, North Carolina's in play. We could win Florida. It's going to be a good year, because I want the Congress in January, February, March of 2021 to look like the Virginia General Assembly of this year, where we pass lots and lots and lots of great progressive legislation and we move this country in a forward direction. Clarence, I'm out of breath, and I'd love to take any questions.
Sure, Congressman. I'm just going to start with a question for you about Congress as an institution. I mean, we've never seen any like this kind of situation with the pandemic, and I know that there's been some institutional changes, and it's kept some members from coming back to vote. So my first question is kind of, what's it like there now, and what do you expect like your summer to look like?
It's weird that we had some a fair fight the other day about changing the rules to allow proxy voting. Some Republicans that I respect, people like Tom Cole from Oklahoma, pointed out that we've never done this before through world wars, Civil War, the Great Plague. But we maybe never also had a disease like this that killed people so quickly. And we do have like a third of the members of Congress are 65 or older. Most of the people that I cast ballots for, one suffering from cancer, one had a heart attack, is on blood thinner, one has really serious lung problems. They would have been a great risk if they'd come back to vote. And it's only a 45-day rules change. We're not making this permanent. So I think this is a responsible way to handle it going forward. We're not coming back again until July, because we've spent the last couple of weeks, everybody practicing on WebEx, which apparently is not owned by the Chinese, unlike Zoom. And so we will be doing congressional hearings and congressional markups literally 10 hours a day for the entire month of June. I get a bunch of Science Committee, Ways and Means Committee, my first Joint Economic Committee meeting with Mike Lee next week on charitable giving. And we will be getting a whole package. First of all 12 appropriations bills done at home by Zoom, et cetera, or by WebEx, and then come back in July for the month and pass everything. So it's just a different world, but we have to adapt, and we are.
Great. So we'll move on to a few policy questions that have come through the Facebook chat. I think George Floyd, the tragedy there with the killing, with his killing in Minnesota, has really prompted quite a response from everyone. I think it's something that we're all trying to figure out. What can we do to bring justice for George? In your role in Congress, I know that there's, like some actions that could be taken on potentially policing or, in some other areas related to civil rights. Like, what can Congress do to, address the situation?
Let me give you 3 or 4 quick ideas. Number one, we can stop this militarization of the police. Part of that is an overflow from the defense industrial base, where people who make equipment for military, when they don't need it anymore, have to find somebody to sell it to. So they say, you federal government, buy it and give it to whoever you want. But it's the wrong thing. I'd much rather see us move towards a British model where you have a walking stick, a billy club, or whatever they call that. The qualified immunity needs to be looked at very seriously. I don't see any reason why we need to be giving police officers or anyone else impunity to do whatever they want to do. With the Bijan Gaisar killing, which I'm sure most people on the call remember, now 2.5 years ago, when he took 10 bullets by 2 park police officers, when he had broken no laws, hadn't even sped, and killed him. And one of the things that Eleanor Holmes Norton and I have been fighting for is universal body cameras for every federal police officer. We have a pilot study going right now. It's going to be tough in the short run to fund it, but it's the right thing to do. I want to see the body cameras on the George Floyd killing, and the body cameras of the person that grabbed somebody out of line in Columbus next to Congresswoman Joyce Beatty yesterday, the day before.
Okay.
Police officers who put black tape over their names and over their badges. It's totally the wrong thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on another topic, we have a question about the Postal Service, and we know that there's a funding issue there. What can be done to ensure that the Postal Service is strong enough to, handle the mail, particularly since we're talking a lot about, mail-in voting for this November?
Yeah. We put a bunch of money for the Postal Service in the first CARES Act, which did become law. There's a bunch more in the HEROES Act, CARES 2.0, which is right now in negotiation between, among Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Steve Mnuchin. I'm hoping that we'll be called back sooner than the end of this month to vote on it. The big structural thing, though, first thing, we can't walk away from the post office. That's insane. And it's actually insane for Republicans. As you know, Republicans represent most of rural America right now, and rural America would be cut off from the rest of the world without the post office. We struggle to get rural broadband everywhere, but we already have the rural post office. It's incredibly important. The structural problem, Clarence, is that some 15 years ago, probably in an attempt to make the private competitors more competitive, they imposed this ridiculous $6 billion a year pre-funding obligation on the post office. So every year it loses $6 billion. It would be perfectly competitive and, if not profitable, at least break even without having to fund pension benefits for people that hadn't been hired yet, in many cases people that hadn't been born yet. So I'm hoping the first thing we'll do in a Biden administration, not the first thing, but among the first things we do, is get rid of this unnecessary burden on the Postal Service and allow them to be competitive. By the way, I served in Switzerland for 4 years, where the post office also did all rural transit, banking for the underbanked. They did insurance for the underinsured. They played other important roles in society, and they could again too.
Okay, we have another question here. It's related to overseas voting. I guess back in 2016, 6% of eligible voters lived overseas. The question is, can Democrats try to bring some of these people into the fold, get them registered and absentee ballots before November, and have them engaged? Thoughts on that, Congressman?
Yeah, it's. I was very big in Democrats abroad when I lived in Switzerland, and have many close friends, and they did a really good job, including, I mean, Tim Kaine still goes every year to do fundraising events with them, and they were very loyal. There's something like 6 million Americans living abroad, and most of them, I think, share our values. First of all, they've traveled outside their own county or their own state, so it gives them a worldview that most of the Trumpsters probably don't have. But getting them signed up, registered to vote is often difficult because many of them, if they've lived overseas for a while, they have to have an address back in Virginia or Maryland or wherever they're from, and they often don't have that address. And one of the things I fought the whole time I was there was this unique set of double taxation we have, where only 2 countries in the world tax their citizens abroad, Eritrea and the United States. And so you pay taxes in Germany, and then you pay taxes again here. And it makes it really, really expensive, which is why of all the countries in the OECD, we have the smallest percentage of our citizens working abroad, because it's just too expensive to take Americans abroad to have them work because of the double tax. Again, something that we should fix someday.
Sure.
And if you're thinking rich people living on the Riviera, that's not very sympathetic, but most of them are solidly middle class. I'm just trying to do their job.
Mm-hmm. We have a question here. It has to do with Trump's threat to use active duty military on U.S. soil. And the question is whether you've been hearing anything from the Republican side on this.
Nothing from the Republican side. I did hear that Trump had put General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, in charge, which calms me down quite a bit, because my experience of the flag officers, first is many of them, I don't know if it's a big majority, but I bet it's a majority, have been aghast at his leadership and the things he's done to undermine military morale, the pardoning of war criminals, the way he treats the generals and the admirals and the like. So I'd rather have them in charge than him. And when he tells them that they need to pack Lafayette Park with troops, they've got to do it. But I'm certainly hoping and praying that those troops are not used inappropriately. There certainly are many other instances throughout history, including when Dwight Eisenhower drove the veterans off the mall, or was it at Anacostia? I'm not sure, but it's a tragic thing when this is what an American president thinks he needs to do, and completely unnecessary.
Absolutely.
I wish the TV stations would pay a little attention to the manifold, myriad peaceful protests that went on around the country, including one in Arlington over the weekend where the police joined in and walked with the protesters.
Yeah, saw that. Yeah, we definitely need to keep a focus on that. I think we've got time for only one additional question, Congressman. And this one, you may or may not want to wade in now, but I think it's something that's at the top of everyone's mind on the Democratic side. Like, Congressman, you were an early backer of a presidential candidate, so you didn't shy away from that. But there's a lot of discussion about VP choices. And I guess the question here is, do you have a preference for vice president? And or if you don't, what are the top criteria you think he should be looking at?
Well, I have a split preference. First of all, I was early Mayor Pete, and proud of it. I'm totally in for Joe, and my wife is all Biden all the time, so I'm married into the campaign. But I'm really happy with the way Pete and the others have enthusiastically come on board with Joe Biden. They've all come together, including Bernie, which I'm really grateful for. because we're all going to have to be pulling in the same direction. My favorite two choices are Val Demings and Susan Rice. Val, because she's got a great story. She joined the police department as a young woman, worked her way up to chief, married to the guy who got elected sheriff and now the mayor. She's beloved on Capitol Hill. She was one of the prosecutors in the impeachment. I just saw her on the TV shows yesterday morning. She was really good. Gives a great speech, and she puts Florida in play. I'd love to win Florida. What Republican has ever won the White House in our lifetimes without winning Florida? None. And Susan, on the other hand, is of all best. She's brilliant. She was National Security Advisor, Ambassador to the UN. She's the ultimate professional Washington bureaucrat who understands government inside and out. And she's also very articulate, great speech, warm, funny, and Joe loves her. But let me say one more thing is I think what the Biden campaign is doing is they're running Susan and Val and Stacey and Kamala and stuff, letting them do as many things publicly as possible, just to see how they play with the American public. Yeah, how it will work out. I'm something that John McCain probably wished he'd done with the woman from Alaska in 2008 before announcing who she was. He's letting the public vet these good people already. By the way, whoever Joe picks, that's who I'm for.
Yeah, I mean, he's got many good choices, that's for sure. So I think, Congressman, that's all we have time for tonight. I think if it's okay, we're going to move on to our second special guest for the evening, who's Jennifer Ayers. Jennifer serves as the executive director of Alive, a local nonprofit that has been doing really incredible work to serve Alexandrians in need for a long time. I think celebrating a 50th anniversary.
That's correct. Yes.
And we were just talking about how most of your time is really now spent on food distribution during the COVID pandemic. So please, let us know kind of like what you're up to and how we can help.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to, come to all of you with an attitude of gratitude because the Alexandria community has really stepped up for us. We have been around for 50 years. We're actually in our 51st year this year. And food distribution is what we've been doing the most of right now. But we have 6 programs. We have a child development center. We do furniture and housewares, and we provide rental assistance. We have the oldest transitional shelter in the state of Virginia. And we have, of course, our food program. Our furniture and housewares program are currently closed because we can't go into people's home to deliver those. And unfortunately, our child development center will be closing. We're taking a pause on that because under COVID, we cannot continue to operate safely. So we're going to see where we are in another year. But right now, that's a hard thing for Alive to decide. It's an old program. It's been around as long as the organization. And we had been providing year-round full-day care for low-income students for 48 years. So that's a big pause for us and something we took into consideration. But the rental assistance program is also very busy right now. We have a significant increase in the request for rent, and that also includes utilities and medical assistance on a regular basis. But really, most people are calling for help with rent. And then our food program has grown exponentially. As you know, people in the community are donating significantly to help support that program. And we're also grateful for the support of people like you who advocate for things like the CARES Act and support things like Farm to Families, which is getting produce back out there. When all this started, we had some significant supply chain issues. Everyone bought everything up in the grocery stores. There went our donations. So we really had to rely on purchasing food for the first time instead of the community donations that we normally have. And the output of food has just tripled. So before we started the call, I was telling Congressman Beyer that we normally do about 30,000 pounds of food in a month. In April, we distributed 98,000 pounds of food. This last weekend, we did about 1,000, a little more than 1,000 families. So that's about 4,000 families. And that's 13 tons of groceries, 8 tons of produce, and 1,800 eggs, dozen eggs. So when you translate that, that's about enough food for those families for about a week. And we're starting to do that every week. So we're wrapping around our services around a lot of other things going on in town. So we're not just doing those big distributions, but handing out pre-bagged groceries to other nonprofit organizations, other meal distributions, and community partners. So that's where those numbers start to escalate. And I think the biggest change too is just how we operate. We used to put everything out on a last Saturday, and volunteers would come and they would pack everything up. Now, because of social distancing, all the volunteers have to be 10 feet apart. So we've had to spread out. We're actually using the old Dash bus barn. And we have pallets of food 10 feet apart where people have to come with a bag and go from pallet to pallet and fill up each pre-bagged food. And then we put them in trucks. Those trucks then drive up to our distribution site, and we take it from the truck and put it into someone's trunk. So we've created truck to trunk to keep people socially distanced and safe while they're distributing food. So people then can also walk up, take from a table, or in some cases a bus. We pull up the Dash bus full of food. We put it from the table, and then the person can walk up and get their food and walk home, to try to keep it contactless. So we're doing more with fewer volunteers and just an extremely large output. So the whole operation had to change from being sort of very close-knit and grassrootsy and everyone together to being much more efficient and much larger in capacity very quickly. So that's what we've been doing. And it's been very busy. So
sure. Are you still seeking volunteers, Jennifer,
yes,
like from the community?
Absolutely.
And how can you help?
Yeah, so they can register at Volunteer Alexandria, and they can come in and help pack all our food. Because like I was saying, everything has to be pre-bagged now, whereas before we could just deliver to a pantry. We would just deliver food and people would pack it because people can't do that anymore because they're in close quarters. We have to pre-bag everything so they can come and pack food. We also need people to help. We're managing the city's quarantine reserve. So if someone does have COVID, they should contact the Alexandria Department of Health. And then they contact us and we get a list of people, not their names, but we get a list of people who need food, who are food insecure with COVID, and we prepare food for them to go via volunteer to their home. So we do need people to help prepare that food. This was the first day in a long time where our cases went down. So we only had 20 deliveries today. So that tells you sort of the extent of the reserve. So when we started, we were like, okay, we'll just keep a steady reserve. And now we can hardly keep up with it because there's so much food going out. I think, as you know, COVID is affecting people who live in close quarters. So if it's one person in a family, and they share that 2-bedroom apartment with 2 other families, everybody in that household gets it. So we're sending out a lot of food for people in neighborhoods where it's spreading rapidly. So that's what we're trying to do, is just keep that food reserve up. So that's a way volunteers should help. We also need leadership talent. People who can tweet out social media, who want to help us re-envision what to do with our CDC, and who are experts in just different types of areas. So, I look around a committee like this and I'm like, you've got lots of brain power. So if people want to get involved in sort of what do we do post-COVID and how do we manage the next step, I'm interested in that too.
Yeah, that would be great. And I'd love to, stay in touch with you and for you to just let us know how we can be helpful. We do have a committee membership of over 300 people, a lot of people, professionals in a number of areas, policy expertise, scientific expertise, that could be helpful to help serve the community. So we'd love to take you up on that opportunity. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with today? Anything that, are you in need of financial contributions or
Financial contributions help. They go basically right back out, particularly for rental assistance. Most people think of us as food, but again, we are supporting many efforts in the community. One thing we're also looking at now is providing masks with our grocery bags, so that a mask goes out with those grocery bags, and we're working in partnership with the city on that. I also want people to remember that we were doing this before COVID, and we'll continue to do it after. It's just that we're doing more of it. My board president likes to say we're doing it the same but different. I just kind of reiterate that it's the same thing we're doing. We're just doing it differently, and we're doing more of it. So poverty doesn't go away, and I think based on what we're seeing already, this is going to be with us for a while. So your continued attention to the needs of our community is just very important.
Well, congrats again on 50 years of dedicated service to the Alexandria community, and we'll definitely do whatever we can to support your efforts. So I think we're about out of time. I wanted to thank Congressman Beyer as well as Jennifer for joining us here tonight to kind of share the latest on what's been going on in Congress as well as here in the community. And we hope to have you back again at some point as well. So to everybody who's out there, thank you for all you're doing. We know it's a tough time, and we look forward to bring everybody back so we can really finish this campaign year very strong. Thank you so much.